Good afternoon. You are indeed listening to Expat Radio. I'm Bill Anderson, and I'm coming live from beautifully sunny, blue-skied Costa del Sol. And I'm very happy to welcome my guest today, Mr. Ralph de Jong. Ralph, how are you?
Fine, Bill. Fine, fine. Long time without speaking to you.
Yes. Yeah. We've had this sort of long distance relationship, Ralph, haven't we, over a period of time? And we'll come round to talking about some of that later. We're going to talk about two things today, Ralph. The first thing is you recently moved to mainland Spain from Mallorca, and we're going to talk about how, for you, island living was. And the other thing that we're going to talk about, which is something that I come across, if not on a weekly basis, certainly on a monthly basis, is people who have problems in buying properties in Spain. They can buy them, but the problems usually come afterwards. And we're going to talk about what you've been doing to try to minimize that for people. But first of all, Ralph, tell us where you're from originally.
Well, I'm Dutch from Holland. Therefore, I have to apologize from the beginning for my Dutch accent and maybe a lack of vocabulary speaking with you. So keep it simple.
We'll give it
Uh,
simple, yeah.
I'm from Amsterdam, the capital of Holland.
Yeah. So, how did Mallorca happen, Ralph?
Well, that goes a long way back because when I was 4 years old, I went there on holiday with my parents.
Hmm.
And we came there several times afterwards. And some 20, 25 years later, I wanted to find out what it was like to getting back memories, how it was like where we were when I was 4 years old.
Right.
And honestly, I fell in love with the island. It's so beautiful, beautiful nature, the beaches. So yeah, it was like, and if I go to live abroad, it will be Mallorca. That
Eh,
was the decision I
Right.
made at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, but when my kids were small, a couple of times several times actually, we went to Menorca, and I can identify with what you're saying because you're there on holiday, you don't have a care in the world, you're walking around and thinking, oh my God, I could live here.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's the same. I think the same feeling for everybody who buys a house in Spain, honestly, because you fall in love with the place where you go to. And if you go there several times, this is the place where you might as well prefer to live instead of your own
Yeah.
country.
Yeah, and listen, Of, we don't want to focus particularly on the place where you lived in Mallorca because we don't want people to think it's a good place, a bad place, or whatever.
Mm.
But you moved to Mallorca. It wasn't one of the big towns, was it?
No, we went to a really small town called Sawyer, which is amazing. It has a little tram. It has a nice square. The ambience it has a port as well.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
it's a really old town, built with the old stone. So it's like a historical town. Really beautiful.
Right. So it's got a very romantic feel to it, is it? Like
Yeah,
like something out of a movie.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why so many people fall in love with Sawyer because Sawyer, even on the whole island, Sawyer has some kind of magic. You have to pass through a tunnel and you enter the valley. It's like entering a new, different world.
Really.
Yeah, it has something special. Everybody says the same thing. If you live in Sawyer, you come to Sawyer. Even within the island, if you leave the tunnel, it's like entering the valley. It's entering a new world within an island, which is really
Right.
special feelings. Yeah.
Right. So I'm getting a picture here, and I can understand why you kind of fell in love with that, Ralph. How long did you live in Soria?
We lived there for 12 years,
Right. Okay.
quite some
So
time.
what was your experience like, and did it change over the years that you were there?
Yeah, well, I came there because of a dream. It was a dream spot to live.
Sure.
And the dream ended, honestly, a bit when I bought my house, but that we will talk about later because I bought, as a lot of people, a problem house. Um, but the island life, I think that's your question, um, is nice because
Right.
it's nice. It has the around. It's surrounded by beaches. Everything is close.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the capital, Palma de Mallorca, is also a really beautiful uh, uh, place to stay. So in fact, it had all that one is looking for. or what we were looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
So do I take it then that what you bought was a house in the countryside rather than in the old town?
Yeah. I bought an old finca,
Uh-huh.
which is I think a dream of a lot of people to have an old farmhouse, which you can renovate. Or another dream, I can build this up and make it beautiful again. So that's where the dream started, and that's
Yeah.
also when the problem started, honestly.
Yeah, but it sounds like but there have been several movies about people buying there was a year in Provence and I think there was one about the Tuscan Dream or something and people buy these old properties.
Yeah.
Did you have any serious problems just with the building being such an old building, Ralph?
No, it was not such. It was not the building. I thought I thought I was an intelligent guy, and I always thought that intelligence and being naive are different and cannot be combined.
R-
Um, Now I know that intelligence and being naive has nothing to do with each other. And
Okay,
it was not such as the building, because I was there every day with the renovation.
right.
So that was easy to control. It was more like the juridical and the urbanistic part, which I didn't know of.
Okay,
And that was where the problem started. When I found out that certain things, once you're owner, things show up. Hey, you need a license for this, license for that, and then you start to be confronted with the problems the house had. So that was a bad experience. So Mallorca, fantastic, but if you buy a house without a problem, you can enjoy Spain wherever in Spain to the
sure.
full. But if you buy a problem and you were confronted with it, yeah, then things might change.
Yeah, and you know, people may not be aware, and I presume it's no different in Mallorca than it is here where I live, for example,
Mhm.
that basically you can't do anything to your house without a building license, even if you're changing the tiles or you know, even if it's inside stuff, putting new windows in, changing the tiles, putting a solar panel on, you need to get a license for it. Was it the same for you in Mallorca?
No, we honestly we didn't have a problem with that. So I wasn't even the owner at that time. I asked for the building license, but without being an owner, I didn't even know that that was possible.
Right.
So you can
Okay.
ask a permission for a license for renovation for a property which is not even yours. But that's another story.
Right.
So I got the license without being the owner yet. So
Okay.
I don't know how people do it, but yes, you need for everything. In fact, you need for everything a license. But there are so many houses here which will not be able to have a license.
No, that is the problem, isn't it? That sometimes in order to get the license, you need certain types of paperwork about the house, and if the house doesn't have those, then you don't get the
We
license.
both know we both know what the problem could be.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So you're living in this idyllic little hidden old town on the island of Mallorca.
Yeah.
Um, just tell us what life was like in this little place.
Well, the good thing, what I always found out about this little place, this little gem, is that it's a good mix of cultures, a good mix of foreign people. It's not only Mallorquin, only Spanish. It was a good mix of German, English, Swedish, Dutch, Belgian,
Right.
um, and so on. A lot of Latins. Um, so it was like where you live, for example. It was quite an international community, and
Okay.
that makes it nice to live. I think we will be able to connect quite easily with the people living there.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently in Mallorca there are little places, for example, Alcudia and Poyensa, which is more in the north of Mallorca, where it's mainly British people. If you go
Right.
to Arenal or if you go to the southwest, it's mainly German.
Right.
Yeah.
There are places along the coast here that are very much like that as well. When you're on the west side of Malaga, I think in general that there are more Brits than any other nationality. And then when you move to the east side of Malaga, along the coast nearer to where you are, there are
So,
pockets there that are very much German
yeah.
residents or
But
German
there's there's
owners.
there's a frontier. which is called Nerja.
Yes.
And that's where the Germans stopped and the British come in again. Because
Right.
I don't want to get into history, but
No, no.
there is a little also really nice place. Well, you for sure know it, Nerja.
I know Narca pretty well, yeah.
It's so nice, and that's more or less British, more British than German.
And then when you go a little bit along to Torrox, it's you know, when you
And
go
it's
in,
Germany. And then we're in Germany. Yeah,
it's little Germany, yeah. You go into a restaurant and all the menus are in Spanish and German, you know.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, we take a drive a little bit more, and we go to Malaga if we go out for dinner.
Right.
But I must say, we went to Torrox, and you're right. It's in German and in Spanish, but friendly people, I must say.
Yeah,
That was where we were. Huh?
we've had friends who've lived in that area. Actually, some of them were Dutch, and you know, we visited them quite a lot, and it's a very nice place to visit, and it's very friendly. But you just notice, coming from where we come from, which you know, Mijas has one of the largest British resident population of any municipality in Spain.
Yeah,
I think it's only in the part of the Valencian region, Elche, in that area, that has a higher percentage of British residents. So yeah, it's just this feeling that you've almost moved into another country, you know?
yeah. But you still live in England too, yeah? Or
Yeah, yeah. Well,
no,
I live out in the countryside, Ralph, and
yeah.
the neighbors that I have are all Spanish, and all real country Spanish people. You know, they're great people.
But
Uh,
what I found out, Bill, I don't know if you've seen it on the Spanish television, that 60% of the population of Malaga is foreign.
I I can
Amazing.
believe that because I just got updated numbers for Mijas alone, and you know, Mijas has a very strong Spanish population, but a solid one third of the population are I call them internationals, you know, from 120 countries. So we've got 29,000 internationals living in Mijas out of a population of 90,000, which it's a big mixture. It's 120 nationalities. The Brits are the largest single nationality, but we've got Dutch and Danish and Swedish and Norwegian and French, Italian. It's a real mixing pot, which is lovely.
Yeah, yeah, we've been there. Yeah. We didn't see each other, but I've been there.
Yeah. So, Ralph, you're living in your old finca. You've realized your dream. Was there a kind of honeymoon period for this before it started to feel different for you?
Well, when I first rented, meanwhile I was doing the renovation of the house,
Right.
which was the most relaxed period in a way because I was busy thinking
Uh-huh.
about how to make this project work and make this a nice finca, a nice farmhouse. No, in fact, we were pretty happy until the problems showed up.
Right.
Uh, and because my situation was a little bit different. I didn't bought an illegal house; it was an old farmhouse, so it would have all the documents that it should have because of this, because of the age of the house,
Right.
still value. No, but it started when it was a finca which didn't have water rights, for example, and
Okay.
we did the renovation, we did the garden, we needed water for the plants, for the wheat, etc., for the grass. Um, and there was no water coming. And that's, in fact, that was more maybe the turning point when we woke up. We had water. This water in Mallorca is really pretty nice. It comes from the mountain. There are fountains, different
Right.
fountains, which go from the mountain, comes to the valley through these little canals. And all these canals, all these fountains have sort of a community that owns this fountain and the water. They need to divide between the several owners.
Okay.
And this is an historical way of irrigation for fincas.
Yeah.
When I bought this house was with water rights. And one
Okay.
day when we went to irrigate in full summer, there was not enough water. Like here on the mainland, some you have also dry periods. You have to be careful. And there was no water coming. But I
Mm,
knew because my garden was pretty young, the trees would die. I spent a lot of money in my garden, so I need it because if I don't have water from now during the whole summer, I can start all over again. This cannot be true.
absolutely. Yeah.
No.
But we had similar experiences here, Ralph. When I bought the finca, the water was coming from a private well, which was shared by three or four neighbours. And at first it was fine, and then we had a problem with the water levels dropped, and the pump was no longer underwater, and it had to be dropped, I think, down to about 120 meters. And of course, these things always happen in August when everybody's on holiday. And then eventually we do actually have municipal water now, which has made a massive difference to us. But yeah, I mean, the whole water situation, especially when you move away from the towns and the main areas of population, water can be a problem, can it?
Yeah, well, you have town hall water now. We didn't. We depended on this water also because the garden was quite big. You will never do the irrigation with town hall water. It's too big for that. It's too expensive.
Sure.
We use this water from these canals for irrigation, also for
Hmm.
uh, private use to
Yeah.
shower, etc. etc.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Ralph, you spent how many years? 12 years on Mallorca, did you say?
yeah, yeah. Come on here.
What prompted you to make the decision to move on to mainland Spain from Mallorca?
Um, well, I think the time we had there was pretty stressful because of the problems. And that was
Yeah,
one reason. So, okay, let's leave this behind and start over again, start all over again. Um, but also another thing is, and I can best illustrate that on the hand of what are we going to do this weekend? And if you live there for 12 years in winter time, well, if it's high season, there's no problem. You go to the beach. It's nice weather. There's no problem. Where we go to the beach. But when it's off season and the weather starts to be turning different, you have to do something. In this little village, you have to escape. Every
right.
weekend, you want to escape because it's too small. And every time we made the same mistake, there was another solution. We jumped in the car with the sister of my wife, with my mother. Let's go out. Where are we going to?
Yeah.
Let's go to the other side of the tunnel. And, uh,
Do I turn right or left at the other side of the tunnel, sort of thing? Yeah.
so let's see where there are other people living on this island. Let's meet them. And
Yeah.
and every time it was the same thing. We were in the car. When we were in the tunnel, it was time to decide because after the tunnel we have to turn left, right, or go straight ahead to Palma.
Right.
And it was always the same thing. Where do we go to? And we when we left the tunnel, let's go to the Turkish restaurant in Palma.
Right.
it was like let's go there again because we didn't know where to go to. And well, it sounds a bit like there was nothing to do there, but after 12 years, it becomes too small.
Yeah, and from what I understand, our daughter actually is working in Puerto Alcudia. She's been there just over a year,
Mhm.
and I think there were two things that surprised her because she's working in the hospitality industry,
Mhm.
and of course most of that closes down over the winter.
Yeah.
And she had taken piles of stuff with her uh, pre-summer when she went there to start working. And then she couldn't believe how cold it got in the winter. And she had to
Yeah.
come back and get all the rest of her winter stuff, you know?
Yeah, but that's a strange thing because she is used to the cold, I think. And me too.
Well,
In Holland, it wasn't cold.
yeah, well, she's not really, because it's actually my stepdaughter. She's Spanish.
Mhm. Okay.
She was born in Madrid, lived in Andalusia, and yeah, it gets pretty cold in places like Granada. But I think she wasn't kind of prepared for how cold it got on Mallorca in the
Yeah.
winter.
But I think Bill, it's more, and we felt the same thing. Whatever I was used to cold,
Uh,
and the temperature in Mallorca is nothing compared to Holland.
Of course.
But it's not the temperature; it's the humidity.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
makes you feel the cold up to until your bones,
Sure.
and it makes you feel really cold.
Yeah.
In the example, when we had this finca, if you don't turn on the chimney to
Uh,
get the humidity away, it also feels like cold. But it's not cold; it's humidity.
right. Yeah. But it's pretty much the same down here, to be honest. And you know, the interiors of the houses here where we live, it's very often colder indoors than it is outdoors in wintertime.
Yeah. And then you have to come closer to where a Dutch person you know lives,
Uh-huh.
and this is called Almuñeca.
Yes.
The, there is less humidity. It's not that cold in winter and not that hot in summer.
All right. Okay. Yep. I know Almuñeca a little bit. But I know the area, and it's actually not very far away from us. That's true. It's
No, no,
about an
that's,
hour's
that's
drive.
it's quite close.
Yeah.
But the climate seems to change a lot.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, we choose it like this.
Hmm.
We went to look up for houses while in where you live in Mijas,
Yeah.
and finally we choose this because it's small.
Yeah.
And we
And
didn't even know about the difference in climates. We just thought it might be all the same, but it's not.
no, I think what you find down here, Ralph, is that along the coast there's a whole series of microclimates. You
Exactly.
know,
Yeah.
and it's to do with the fact that most municipalities are divided up by the mountain ranges on the north side. So you've got
Mm-hmm.
the mountain ranges in Marbella, you've got the Sierras in around Mijas, and it seems to create little microclimates all along the coast. So every place is just a little bit different, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So, so really, you know, I don't think you're saying here that it was a bad experience being in
No, no,
Mallorca.
no, 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 no. I must admit that for holidays, Mallorca is tremendous.
Sure.
I even think that if I would start all over again and nothing would have happened, I still would have chosen Mallorca to have a second home, for example.
Right. Okay.
Uh, but to live, and that's also a personal thing. I know people that are living there many years more than I do. I did, and they're still happy. But it depends on how you want to live your life.
Yeah, but I think the important message here, Ralph, is that island living is not for everyone all the time. that
Exactly.
that you know some people's lifestyles might adapt extremely well to having these limitations, especially when things are in the main closed down in winter. But for other people it feels a bit sort of limiting.
Yeah. Well, that's a feeling we had, and which was confirmed since we live here where we live now.
Yeah, yeah. So have you really noticed the difference being on mainland Spain compared to your 12 years on Mallorca?
Yeah. And actually, we made one miscalculation. Is that we always had the idea that Andalusia was quite dry,
Right.
because and hot and dry and not green, etc., etc. And I have to admit that that was a miscalculation. We went to last weekend. We went to Cordoba.
Yeah.
You must know the road.
Yeah, yeah.
Cordoba. Well, I was driving with my mouth open all the time. So green, so beautiful,
Yeah,
so wide. Every square centimeter seems to be part of the agriculture. Uh,
sure.
it's amazing, amazing.
There are a lot of olive trees.
Yeah, you can. My wife knows it because she's allergic.
And so is mine. But 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 we actually have two olive trees in the garden, and I don't want to cut them down because I don't like cutting trees down. But Vicky was born in Madrid, moved to Australia, came back to Madrid, and decided that she would move down to Andalusia. So she'd
Mm.
never actually lived in Andalusia until she was married, had her children. And that was when she discovered that she was 100% allergic to olive blossom. And and it's like this yellow powder,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
to say she was born in Spain. There's not many olive trees in Madrid, and there's not many olive trees in Australia.
But there's one English and one Scottish guy who has two in the garden,
I
and
have
that's
two.
not mine.
That's right. Having said that, she likes the olives. It's just that this kind of maybe 3 or 4 weeks when they go into blossom, and you get this yellow powder blowing about in the air, and she starts wheezing and coughing and gets rashes, and
Yeah.
it's
I,
uh,
I, I must say, if I see her, I'm so glad I'm not allergic to these kind of things because it must be a hell.
yeah, yeah, and she always has antihistamines at the ready just in case, and um, but having two trees in our finca is not quite the same as 10,000 trees sort of surrounding
No,
everywhere that you live.
no,
Okay, listen, Ralph, we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we're going to sort of focus a little bit on this thing about buying houses in Spain and buying the dream house, the dream country house, and some of the kind of problems that you're trying to help people avoid through Casa Propia. And well, let's see how we go. So we'll take a short break just now. Thank you, Dave. Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson. I'm coming live from the Costa del Sol with my guest today, Ralph de Jong. We've been talking about island living compared to mainland living. Um, Ralph, we're going to talk about this other project that you took on. You talked about your farmhouse project. Can you tell us a little bit about your other project, which you call Casa Propia, which means basically my own home, yeah, or my home?
exactly. Well, in fact, it started because of the problems I had, because I used to work in real estate in Holland. I chose the Dutch lawyer because I didn't speak Spanish at the time when I bought the house. And I thought I need to be well prepared. I'm going to buy a house, going to invest a lot of money. So I need to know what I'm signing for. So
Sure.
I had a Dutch lawyer from Barcelona. He seems to have offices now all over Spain. Well, mailboxes, I think.
Yeah, yes.
These companies who put on their website will have offices in New York, France, wherever.
Yeah, it's a letterbox in a cafe somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So he is operating all over Spain. Um, no, so when the problem started with my house, I thought, am I this naive, stupid Dutchman, foreigner who bought a house, and am I the only one, or is this a problem what happens more often? Because I
Right.
cannot imagine that what I'm confronting now is happening to me, and I'm having bad luck.
Yeah.
So that's the moment when we started to investigate. We started Casa Propia because I started Googling about illegal homes and people who bought problem houses, etc., etc. And I got into the what you for sure know, the AFOS houses in Andalusia.
Yeah, and the AFO is saying that these are homes that have been built which are not covered by the ordinances that make them legal, basically, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
Houses have been built without a license on, and mostly on land where you may not be able to build.
right.
Um, and I started this group Casa Propia and asking for people who are in this situation as I am, who bought a house with, and this group filled so fast with people who were victim.
Yeah,
And I started chatting with them personally because you also find out that people have fear. They're afraid to open their mouths in public because they don't want anyone to know. It's mainly the family. I don't want people to know that I bought a problem house because everything is hallelujah in Spain. We have the sun, we have the beach. There are no problems. There are,
yeah.
but I want you to know. And I don't want the town hall to know about my problems. I have to hide it because if they know, I might as well be in deeper problems.
Yeah, and Dave mentioned just before we started the show that about people buying a piece of land, building a house, and then the bulldozers coming in. I mean,
Yeah,
it has happened. It hasn't happened that often, but it has happened. And for those that it's happened to, I mean, it's absolute, isn't it?
yeah. Well, I try to make a sort of a comparison. which enters easy. I'm busy with this for 3 years now, and the main part of my job now is communication.
Right.
How do I get into, as they say in Spanish, into the coco, into the head of the people, and to bring my message forward? It always seems like I'm trying to spread out fear when buying a house in Spain, which is absolutely not my intent. My idea is to make people aware when you buy a house in Spain, try to avoid problems if you want to join to enjoy Spain to the full. And I compare it mostly to driving a car without a driver's license.
Right.
And if you have professionals around you who send you on the road without a driver's license, because the chance that something will happen might as well be small. And what can happen? Well, what happens is in a way comparable to what happens with houses. It starts with if you are stopped by the police, that's something that might as well end up into a fine for having the driver license.
Sure.
If you hit another car, you might as well have a bigger problem because this is not insured.
Sure.
But if you hit somebody who's trying to cross a zebra without a driver's license, I can assure you the problems are way bigger.
Sure.
The fact there are people who drive without a license, and I don't know how many times you were called by the police to stop it. There are people who are never stopped by the police.
Yeah.
They drive. You can drive without a driver's license, even if you think I don't going to pay for the driver's license. I will not renew it because I never had an accident in my life. Well, I had one, a small one.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same story. The only thing is with a driver's license or with a car. If you buy a car, you check all the paperwork.
Sure. Yes.
It must have
Yeah.
MOT, it must have the owner papers, etc. And if people buy a house, they have to trust on the professional, and that's where it seems to go wrong. But the paper, there are so many papers in Spain, so many papers that look the same. Or if you put it into Google Translate, la célula habitabilidad, if you put that in Google Translate, it might as well change into occupation license.
Yeah.
So the house has an occupation. No, the house has a cédula. It does have the licencia de ocupación.
Yeah.
And that makes people vulnerable for deception.
And Ralph, are these problems exclusive to the fincas, the houses built in the country that are probably a countryside that are probably kind of on rustic land and technically illegal or irregular, or is this a problem that happens on a wider scale?
No, it's a wider scale, and well, we do now a lot of checks with our team, and people think, and that's a mistake. If a house, for example, is built in an urbanization, you might think this cannot be illegal. All these houses were here for maybe 15, 20, 30 years. This cannot be illegal. And I can assure you it can be. And it not only can be, it happens a lot. And so the thing is, you have to do a good investigation, ask for the paperwork, have a good contract. You cannot imagine how many contracts I get from people which have absolutely no clauses that defends the interests of the buyer. When the house is illegal, you must even buy it or you lose your deposit.
The deposit, yeah.
Which is really crazy. And so what we set up now is, and what I would like to do, I met some German people who bought a 30 million euro finca in Mallorca. Oof. And they could not reform it. They could not do any renovation because there were several casitas on the land. They need to tear down everything. And I'm straightforward. I said, I understand you must be really disappointed, if not furious.
Sure.
But I think there's a big but here. And the but is this your first home, your second, your third? And do you have still something to eat tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or will you die of hunger? And he started laughing. I said, this is not your first home. And I can tell you, there are people investing their complete pension, all their savings into a home, have no money to defend themselves. You know how the legal system in Spain is. They have no way to go.
Yeah.
And that makes me, so therefore what we would like to do is, and that's what we have now, and is a system where we can, for an affordable amount of money, make sure that everybody can buy a house safely.
Yeah, and I still see Bob down the bar on the internet saying you don't need a lawyer to buy a house in Spain. You just agree it with the owner and turn up at the notaries. I still see these comments. What would you say to that?
Well, two things. I had a lawyer. I see a lot of contracts from lawyers. I see a lot of due diligence from lawyers. And I think what we should have and is one standard. If all lawyers and architects would work with one standard, which we can all control or let can be controlled by an institution, that's what we want to be.
Right.
Let your lawyer do the due diligence, but let him do it according to protocols and rules we set up, so nothing can be forgotten to investigate.
Right. So basically a checklist,
Yes, yeah,
which,
it's basically a checklist. Yeah,
this would
yeah,
be done, this is done, this is done, this is done. Oops, there's a
exactly.
problem here. Yeah.
That's what we do, and of course, these checks have to be done by professionals because, for example, we do three different types of checks. One is a document check to find if all the documents are there, and well, I should send you the message I got 1 hour ago from somebody who wants to do a document check. I don't need it because the real estate agent told me he is going to arrange the seller habitabilidad. And I had to respond, listen, the seller habitabilidad has nothing to do with legality.
Right.
You may live in a house is something different than you can live in a house.
Mm.
And this is the one you can live in because there's a bathroom. Well, so the document check has to be done by a professional because there's so many different documents that need to be analyzed. Well, do I have the right documents to be able to sign a contract without any problems?
Right.
The second step is the contract. What we would like to do is let your lawyer set up the contract, but send it to us to find out if there are no clauses in this contract which are not in favor of you.
Right. So that's the document check, Ralph. What would the other checks be that you want to get sort of introduced as standard?
Yeah, so this is one check we do, the documents, then we have the contract check, and the last one is the due diligence. Because every professional has his own way of working, which I do understand. But if there is no possible control, if your professional did the job right,
Yeah.
then there is no possibility to feel comfortable. So yeah, so what we have now is we call it IGP, which is the standard we developed along the years that touches every single part juridically, but most of all urbanistically, because people forget buying with a lawyer is not enough. Most lawyers are not specialized in urbanism and are not able to read zoning plans, the codes that go with it. A lot of lawyers also don't go to the property to find out if the paperwork corresponds with reality.
Yeah, and you know, I shared something with you the other day from a resident in Mijas, and Mijas is by no means the worst place for these things. A lot of rural properties, you know, come with their own complications. But this man had or has a house in a proper urbanization, and he wanted to sell it. He's an elderly man. And they asked for basically a consulta urbanística, which is just sort of asking the council about the property. And he got a letter back saying, "No, you can't sell it. It's built on a green zone and it's now illegal." And no, it's like, how did this happen? Because he was never notified. It was all legal when he bought it, and at some point they changed the planning and made it a green zone. And yeah, it's a very complicated thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really complicated. It's really complicated. Well, this case specifically, well, we talked about it, is something which it's impossible to understand.
Yeah.
I don't know all about it because it's not our case, and in fact, I would like to know if the licensee got or the former owner got, because he's not even the first owner; he's the second owner.
Yes.
If the licensee got the license of occupation and the building license, which are the most important ones to have, if these two licenses were obtained legally, because that happens a lot as well. They get it from a town hall, pay money, and they get these two licenses, which are most important.
Right.
That I don't know. But the fact is that if somebody buys a house with these two documents, you cannot blame these people for not having control. It should be like this, Bill. If these documents are there and the house has not been rebuilt, renovated,
Sure.
these documents should be valid.
Yeah.
There is nobody who should be able to. We're going to change this now into green zone or green area because we want to. This is not fair.
No, no.
That
So
is for all the people who bought an AFA house, which I would like to help, but they need to be together. But I'm not to blame.
no.
This is not my fault. You let these houses being built over the years. Why didn't you act at that time?
Sure. And in Mijas, we don't know, but we estimate probably somewhere around 4,000 houses, mainly built in the non rural parts or the non-urbanized parts in the countryside. They call them diseminados, which
Yeah.
basically means spread out. So you take a plot of countryside and you dot a house in various parts of it, and then you have a diseminado, and it's even got a name, Diseminado La Rosa, and all of the houses are basically illegal.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's the thing is, and I discussed that with my neighbor who is a builder and knows every single plant here in the area.
Right.
And he knows the town pretty well. He's 83 years old now. Pepe is his name. And I asked him, he's in this house and this building, all illegal.
Yeah.
And I told him, no, asked him, what would happen? I asked the same questions to the consumer organization in Spain. Oh, never got an answer. What happens if you're having your nice barbecue with your friends and the house burns down?
Yeah.
Is this? Do you get your insurance? Do you get paid from your insurance company? I said, no. Are you sure? I said, yes, because this house you can rebuild the house. You will never get a permission to rebuild, so they don't pay out. I said, do you think what happens if the neighbor's house also burns down?
Yeah.
I said, you're in really deep trouble. Why? Because that's not insured.
So people living in these situations are, faithfully paying their insurance premiums, and it could be the case then that if something serious happens, the insurance company will just turn around and say, no.
Yeah, and here you can not even blame the insurance company because you are the one, and that's an obligation in almost all policies. You are as the owner, have the obligation to show that the house complies with the law and legal situation.
Right, right.
And it's your obligation. They believe your word. If you say I want to insure my house, they don't ask for paperwork because they have the same complexity to invest if the house complies with the law. Somebody has to do diligence to make them
Yeah.
be able to insure their house. Impossible. Too expensive.
What kind of response are you getting, Ralph, to this idea of creating a standard protocol for, checking due diligence before someone buys? Are people interested? Are estate agents, are lawyers, notaries, are they interested in this?
No.
That was a very short answer, Ralph.
And it's quite simple. Well, the honest and ethical lawyers don't have a problem. We work with ethical lawyers. We must do something for these. That's what we are paid for. We are paid to do our job.
Sure.
We're not paid to somebody having a house which is not complying with it. We have to be honest. There are a lot of ethical lawyers, but these lawyers have no problem with a control because we are going to do our work according to the protocols you want us to work with. And we have the problem which we weren't to work with like that to do our job well.
Right.
And the real estate agencies, I seem to be an enemy. I'm not, because we have the same goal. We should have the same goal, and that's defend the interests of the buyer. If you pretend to protect the buyer's interests,
Right.
so I have some lawyers which I know personally, and I never got an answer, a question. Solicitude for a due diligence. Why? Because we go deep and we want people to know what they are buying.
Right.
And they know that we will ask for these documents. They know that we will find out if these documents are valid, if the house has been renovated in the meantime, which makes these documents invalid.
Mm.
And they don't want us to dig deep.
Yes.
You ruin the deal. Yeah, that's the case. So it's not on behalf of the owner or the seller of the house who doesn't have the documents. It's also not on behalf on interest. Sorry, in the interest of the real estate agent, because he might as well lose the deal.
Right.
We better shut up. Send these people on the road without a driver's license. Nothing will happen until something happens, and then we will see. That's a Spanish saying, as you know.
Yeah.
And that's what they apply here.
Okay, Ralph, we are rapidly approaching the end of the show. If anyone who's listening is thinking of buying a property in Spain, what are the ways they could get in touch with you, to sort of find out about what they need to check up on?
Well, I think the best way is I'm the one who is shouting and screaming in the group of Casa Propia. I'm the one who is there facing the problems
Yeah.
and
So
responding. That's okay. But I think I would advise them to go to Casa Propia, which is the Facebook group on internet. And there's a lot of information there. And if they want to be in touch with me, go to the website or send me a PM. Not all at the same time, please, because
yeah, okay.
you
So
are busy, man, but I don't. I want to have my holiday.
holidays? What's a holiday?
Uh,
Ralph,
Pleasure
really,
to answer everyone.
it's been really nice to chat to you today, Ralph, and I'm really grateful for you coming on. And what we're not trying to do is to put people off coming to Spain or buying in Spain,
No, the
but
contrary.
what we're saying is that life is not always as straightforward as it may be in your home country, and you really need um, good, solid, reliable advice before you actually come to that point.
Absolutely.
Ralph, where are you heading off this weekend, right or left under the tunnel?
Oh, depends if you have a good wine in your at home.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Ralph. It's been really nice to chat to you. I have to say, everyone, that I'm not going to be here next Friday. I have been invited to the ambassador's residence in Madrid next Thursday. So we're going to be up there and traveling back down to the coast on Friday morning. So I'm sure Dave will manage something for this hour next Friday. And I'll be back the following week with you. Once again, Ralph, thank you so much for joining me. Whatever you're doing this weekend, have a good one.
Thank you so much.
And folks, if you want more information, Facebook, Casa Propia on Facebook, and you will find Ralph's discussions and debates about this, and it's quite enlightening, to be
I'm not
really honest.
that guy as it looks like on the Facebook group, maybe.
Yeah, you keep asking people questions, and then they complain about the answers. Okay. Have a great weekend, everyone. We're just going to go out with ABBA and One of Us. Thank you, Dave, for producing the show today. Have a great weekend, everyone, and I'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Many thanks.